That's the line that sits at the heart of this conversation because from the moment we're old enough to understand stories, we're fed one version of marriage. The sparkling, cinematic version, the version where love conquers everything, where two people find each other in the chaos of life and suddenly everything makes sense. From Disney movies to romantic comedies to family gatherings, we grow up surrounded by this glowing narrative that marriage is the finish line of love, the ultimate success story, the mark that you've finally made it. But nobody talks about the quiet realities that come after the wedding photos fade, the parts that don't fit into an Instagram caption or a movie montage. We are conditioned to think of marriage as a natural destination, like something everyone eventually arrives at. School, job, marriage, kids, done. It's not a question of if, but when. So we chase it or let ourselves be chased by it. And in that chase, we rarely pause to ask why. Why do we want it so badly? Why do we treat it like a measure of worth, a proof of maturity, or the ultimate validation of being lovable? For most people, it's not even marriage itself that they crave. It's the feeling of being chosen, of being enough for someone to say, "You're my person forever." But that's not marriage. That's the craving for reassurance disguised as romance. What they don't tell you is that marriage isn't just about love. Love may start it, but what sustains it is discipline, communication, compromise, and a kind of emotional honesty that most people never practice before saying, "I do." They don't tell you that sometimes love isn't enough, that two people can love each other deeply and still fail miserably at living together, at building a shared life, at growing at the same pace. They don't tell you how hard it is to wake up next to someone who feels like a stranger after years of routine, or how easy it is to lose yourself in the comfort of "weh," until you can't remember what "I" feels like anymore. Marriage isn't what they told us it is because the version we were sold leaves out the fine print. It leaves out the loneliness that can exist inside togetherness. It leaves out the resentment that can build quietly over time the way love can suffocate when it's never given space to breathe. It leaves out the nights when one person rolls over, pretending to be asleep because they don't know how to say, "I'm not happy," anymore. It leaves out the way small disappointments accumulate until one day they become distance. And yet, we still believe, we still rush toward it because we think it's the cure for emptiness. Because society tells us that being single after a certain age means something is wrong with us. Because every wedding invitation is a reminder that everyone else is moving forward while we're standing still. But what if marriage isn't forward? What if, for some, it's sideways? What if the goal was never to get married, but to understand yourself deeply enough that you can share a life without losing your own? See, the truth is not that marriage is bad. It's that it's human, it's imperfect. It's not the fairy tale, it's the editing room that gets left out. It's two people choosing every single day to stay, not because they have to, not because they're afraid to leave, because they still see something worth staying for. But when you go into it thinking it will complete you, it can only disappoint you. Marriage doesn't fix loneliness, insecurity, or identity confusion. It magnifies them. It puts a mirror in front of you and says, "Here, deal with it together." So when I say marriage isn't what they told us it is, I'm not saying it's a lie. I'm saying it's half the truth, the easy half, the one that fits neatly into a toast or a love song. The hard half, the real half, is that marriage is work, sacrifice, and self-awareness. It's not always romantic. It's not always fair. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit that maybe you're not ready for it, or maybe you don't even want it in the traditional sense. We live in a world where people treat marriage as proof of success, not as a conscious choice. But what if success is actually knowing yourself enough to say, "Not yet"? What if the real milestone isn't the wedding day, but the moment you stop needing marriage to prove your worth? Because that's the irony. The people most ready for marriage are usually the ones who don't need it to feel whole. We've been told for as long as we can remember that love, and by extension marriage, is the ultimate form of completion. That somewhere out there, walking this planet, is your other half. The person who will fill the cracks in your heart, fix your brokenness, and make you whole again. Every song, every movie, every cultural script reinforces that message you are incomplete until you find them. The missing puzzle piece, the soulmate, the one who finally makes life make sense. But that illusion, the illusion of completion, is one of the most dangerous lies we've ever believed. Because when you chase someone to fill your emptiness, you don't find love, you find dependency dressed as devotion. The idea sounds beautiful, of course. Who doesn't want to believe that another human being can heal what life has damaged? That someone can look at your flaws and still say, "You're perfect for me." It's intoxicating. The thought that all your struggles, insecurities, and loneliness could dissolve in the warmth of another person's love. But that belief doesn't lead to peace. It leads to pressure. Because when you expect someone else to make you feel whole, you make them responsible for your happiness, and that's not love, that's emotional outsourcing. The truth is, nobody completes you. They can compliment you, inspire you, challenge you, but completion is an inside job. The illusion of completion convinces people to run from themselves. Instead of facing their wounds, they hope a relationship will bandage them. Instead of sitting in solitude and learning who they really are, they rush to merge identities with someone else, believing that love will fix what self-awareness could not. That's why so many people lose themselves in relationships, because they entered it half-formed, expecting the other person to fill in the missing pieces. It's easy to see why we fall for it. The world romanticizes codependence. We praise the idea of can't live without you, as if it's the highest expression of love, when in truth, it's often a sign of fear. Fear of being alone, fear of not being enough on your own. We've been taught to see wholeness as something we earn through partnership, not something we build through self-understanding. And that's why so many marriages turn into quiet prisons. Not because people stop loving each other, but because they stop knowing themselves. When you believe someone completes you, you start living in reaction to them. Their mood becomes your weather. Their approval becomes your peace. Their love becomes your oxygen. You begin to orbit around their existence, and slowly your sense of self dissolves. You forget what you like when they're not around, what you dream of when no one's watching, what your own silence sounds like. And when that happens, love turns from a shared dance into a desperate grip, holding on not out of choice, but out of fear that without them, you'll fall apart. But here's the irony: even in the most beautiful, deep, and fulfilling relationships, two people will always remain separate beings. No matter how close you get, no one can climb inside your soul and rearrange your wounds. No one can fight your inner battles for you. No one can heal the child inside you who still feels unseen, or the adult who still feels unworthy. Only you can do that. And the more you expect someone else to carry that responsibility, the more the relationship will buckle under the weight of your unmet expectations. Real love begins when two whole people meet, not because they need each other to survive, but because they choose each other to grow. When you no longer need someone to complete you, you finally have the capacity to love freely, without fear or transaction. You stop clinging and start connecting. You stop demanding and start appreciating. You stop asking love to save you and start allowing it to expand you. The illusion of completion also creates another problem. It makes people terrified of solitude. Being alone becomes synonymous with being unworthy. People rush into relationships just to escape silence, to avoid confronting the emptiness they feel when no one is around. But that emptiness isn't a punishment, it's a mirror. It's your soul telling you there's work to do, that you haven't met yourself fully yet. If you skip that meeting, you'll keep dragging your loneliness into every partnership, wrapping it in romance and calling it love. True partnership is not two halves becoming one, it's two wholes deciding to share space. It's the difference between saying, I can't live without you, and saying, life is better with you in it. It's not about filling a void, but about creating something together from overflow. Two people who have already built peace within themselves, choosing to build a new kind of peace together. So don't get married, at least not until you've learned to be your own completion. Until you can sit in a quiet room alone and not feel empty. Until you've fallen in love with your own company, your own growth, your own becoming. Because when you do, marriage will stop being a desperate search for fulfillment and start becoming what it was meant to be all along: a conscious partnership between two people who don't need each other to be whole. They simply want to walk together while already being whole. From the moment we're old enough to understand what love is supposed to look like, we're taught that marriage is not just a personal choice. It's a social achievement. It's something you're expected to do, almost like a rite of passage into adulthood. The pressure begins subtly. Relatives joking about your future spouse, friends talking about dream weddings, movies ending with perfect proposals. Society has built an invisible factory, a social pressure factory, that mass produces the idea that marriage is proof of success, stability, and respectability. If you're not married by a certain age, people start to wonder what's wrong with you, as if happiness has an expiry date that can only be extended with a marriage certificate. In that factory, everyone has a role. Parents become the production managers, reminding you of their sacrifices and their dreams of seeing you settled. Friends turn into quality control officers, comparing your love life to theirs, asking questions like, so when are you next? Even when they don't mean harm. Social media becomes the advertising department, constantly showcasing carefully curated weddings, couple trips, Anniversaries and engagement rings, the entire culture whispers, then shouts you are incomplete until you belong to someone. And the pressure doesn't stop once you're in a relationship. That's just the beginning of another production line. People start measuring how long you've been together, subtly counting the months, then the years. You've been dating for 3 years. What's the holdup? It doesn't matter whether you're happy, growing, or even ready. What matters is that you look like you're progressing according to the invisible timeline everyone else follows. We're made to believe that marriage is not just an option, but a deadline. That's why so many people plan weddings before they plan marriages. The focus shifts from building a foundation to building an event. We spend months, sometimes years, obsessing over details that have nothing to do with the life that follows. The dress, the venue, the photos, the guest list, all to impress a crowd that won't be there when the real work begins. People end up marrying for appearances, not alignment. Because in the social pressure factory, looking successful matters more than being fulfilled. The danger in this system is subtle but devastating. It teaches people to conform before they understand, to please others before they're honest with themselves, to prioritize the performance of love over the practice of love. Many marriages don't fall apart because of lack of affection. They collapse under the weight of expectations that never belonged to the couple in the first place. Society hands out scripts, and most people follow them blindly, find someone, get married, have kids, keep up the image. And in trying to check all the boxes, they forget to ask if any of those boxes actually fit who they are. The social pressure factory also thrives on comparison. Every engagement announcement becomes a quiet reminder to others that they're behind. Every wedding becomes a competition of aesthetics. Every anniversary posts a scoreboard of devotion. It's no longer about love. It's about validation, about proving to the world that you too have something beautiful to show. And yet behind many of those perfect lectures lie silent disconnections, unspoken resentments, and two people pretending for the sake of maintaining a public fairy tale. What's worse is how deeply that pressure shapes our sense of identity. Especially for women in many cultures, marriage is still seen as a measure of worth. A certificate that confirms you are wanted, chosen, acceptable. And for men, it's treated as a sign of maturity, responsibility, and success. Both sides get trapped in roles they didn't write. The woman feels she must be desirable enough to be chosen. The man feels he must be capable enough to choose. It's a transaction of validation disguised as a union of love. But the truth is, you don't owe anyone a wedding to prove your value. Your timeline doesn't need to match anyone else's. Marriage is not a milestone to check off. It's a commitment to be made consciously, not collectively. If you let social pressure make your choices for you, you'll wake up one day living a life that was designed by everyone else's expectations. And that's a kind of quiet misery that no amount of love can fix. We need to start teaching people that not getting married is not failure. Choosing to wait, choosing to grow, choosing to be single until it feels right. But those are acts of courage, not rebellion, because in a world that constantly tells you to rush into partnership, taking your time is radical. Saying not yet or maybe never is an act of self-awareness. The truth is, love shouldn't be a race and marriage shouldn't be a performance. It should be a decision made by two people who are ready to share their peace, not prove their worth. Until then, don't let the factory decide your future. Step outside its walls, breathe, and remind yourself that your life is not a production. It's a story. And the best ones are written honestly, not by committee. We grow up believing that marriage is the safest place in the world, that once you say, I do, the storms of life will calm, and stability will finally settle in like a warm blanket. We're told that marriage is security, that it's the anchor that keeps us from drifting through the chaos of life alone. People call it settling down, as if signing a marriage certificate somehow guarantees peace, order, and predictability. But the truth is, marriage doesn't erase uncertainty. It doesn't eliminate fear. It doesn't guarantee emotional safety. The myth of stability is one of the most comforting and destructive lies that society has ever told us. Comforting because it gives us something to hope for. Destructive because it convinces us to stop questioning what kind of stability we're actually seeking. When people say they want stability, they often mean they want relief from loneliness, from financial insecurity, from the unpredictability of dating, from the anxiety of an undefined future. Marriage is marketed as that relief, a permanent solution to the instability of being human. But real life doesn't work that way. A ring doesn't stop life from happening. People still lose jobs, still change, still get sick, still fall out of love, still wake up one morning wondering why they feel so disconnected from the person lying next to them. Marriage might give you structure, but structure is not the same as stability. One is external, the other is internal. The myth is powerful because it taps into a primal need for safety. Humans crave consistency, something or someone we can depend on. And when we find someone who promises forever, we cling to that promise as if it's a shield against the chaos of existence. But stability built on promises is fragile. People change, and that's not betrayal. That's life. The idea that marriage locks in love forever is comforting, but unrealistic. Love evolves. People evolve, sometimes in the same direction, sometimes apart. When you tie your sense of stability to another person's permanence, you set yourself up for heartbreak, because permanence is an illusion. The irony is that many marriages built in the name of stability end up creating the opposite, quiet turmoil disguised as peace. Two people may stop arguing not because they've grown in understanding, but because they've grown in resignation. They stop talking about dreams, not because they've achieved them, but because they've stopped believing they can change anything. Outwardly, everything looks stable. The house, the kids, the schedule. But inwardly, there's distance, boredom, or even silent resentment. The myth teaches us to equate stillness with stability, but stillness can also mean stagnation. People stay in unhappy marriages because of this myth. They convince themselves that staying is mature, responsible, and noble, that leaving means chaos, shame, or failure. At least the bills are paid. At least the kids have both parents. At least we're not alone. But at least is not a foundation, it's a compromise. Real stability should feel alive, not suffocating. It should make you feel grounded, not trapped. Yet many choose the illusion of peace over the discomfort of truth, because society praises endurance more than authenticity. The myth of stability also comes from fear of the unknown, fear of rebuilding, fear of starting over. Marriage promises to protect you from those fears, but often it just hides them behind routine. People tell themselves they're stable because their lives are predictable, same partner, same house, same routine. But emotional chaos can exist inside predictability. You can have a mortgage, a family, a shared last name, and still feel completely unanchored inside your own life. True stability doesn't come from a legal bond or shared address. It comes from emotional maturity and self-awareness. You can't build stable love on unstable selves. If two people haven't faced their insecurities, their trauma, their fears, they'll just project them onto each other, mistaking comfort for connection. Real stability means being able to face discomfort together, to adapt, to evolve without clinging to a fixed image of what the relationship should be. But that kind of stability requires constant honesty and effort, two things that the fairy tale version of marriage conveniently leaves out. The saddest part is that many people discover the myth too late. They wake up years into marriage and realize they're not safe. They're just settled. They're not calm. They're numb. They thought marriage would be a fortress, but it turned into a cage with polite smiles and shared responsibilities. They mistake endurance for strength, when sometimes strength is the courage to say, this isn't stability, it's survival. So don't get married because you think it will make life easier, safer, or calmer. It won't. It might make it richer, deeper, or more meaningful if it's built with awareness, but never safer. Life will always be unpredictable, and no partnership can protect you from that. Marriage should not be the place you go to escape instability. It should be the place you go to face it together. Because true stability doesn't come from holding everything still. It comes from learning to stand steady while everything moves. Once upon a time, marriage was simple, not necessarily easy, but simple. It was a practical arrangement, a social contract built for survival. People married to combine resources, to raise children, to maintain lineage, to share labor, to ensure security in a world that was often unstable. Love, if it appeared, was a luxury, not the foundation. But the world changed, and so did the purpose of marriage. We now live in an era where marriage is supposed to deliver everything: romance, emotional fulfillment, personal growth, sexual excitement, spiritual alignment, and lifelong companionship, all in one package with one person. The problem is we're still using an old institution to serve new emotional expectations. That's the modern mismatch, trying to build a 21st century relationship with a framework designed for the 18th. In today's world, marriage is no longer a necessity. We can survive and thrive alone. We have independence, education, careers, and technology that connect us to people everywhere. We no longer need marriage for survival, so we expect it to serve a higher purpose: happiness, self-actualization, and meaning. But marriage wasn't built for that. It was built for endurance, not enlightenment. And now we've turned it into a container for every emotional need we have, stretching it so wide that it's almost destined to tear. We expect our partner to be everything: lover, best friend, confident motivator, therapist, adventure buddy, spiritual guide, financial partner, and co-parent. One person playing 10 different roles, all while also managing their own emotional complexities. It's an impossible job description. No one can be your everything, and expecting that sets both people up for disappointment. The modern mismatch isn't that marriage doesn't work, it's that our expectations of it have become unrealistic. We want love to give us what only personal growth, community, and self understanding can provide. In earlier generations, people married for stability and social standing. Now, we marry for self expression and personal growth. We want our partners to help us find ourselves, to keep life exciting, to constantly evolve with us. But personal evolution isn't linear. Sometimes people grow in opposite directions. And when that happens, instead of acknowledging the natural shifts of life, we label it failure. The truth is, many modern marriages don't collapse from lack of love. They collapse from the weight of expectation. We've made marriage too sacred, too heavy, too symbolic. It's no longer just a partnership, it's an identity project. Social media has only deepened the mismatch. We no longer just live our marriages, we perform them. We curate images of happiness, smiling selfies, anniversary posts, carefully written captions, while behind the scenes, the pressure to maintain that image suffocates the relationship. Marriage becomes less about connection and more about presentation. And when the performance starts to feel empty, we assume something's wrong with us or with the relationship instead of realizing that no human bond can compete with the fantasy we've created online. Even the concept of forever, once the heart of marriage, feels out of sync with modern life. We live longer, move faster, have more opportunities, and experience more change in one lifetime than our ancestors did in several generations. Expecting two people to evolve at the same pace with the same dreams through decades of transformation is romantic, but statistically improbable. Yet we still cling to the same promise, one person, one love for life. When that promise cracks under the pressure of modern complexity, we don't see it as natural evolution, we see it as moral failure. The modern mismatch also lies in how we confuse connection with control. We say we want love, but what we often want is certainty. To know someone will never leave, never change, never hurt us. But love doesn't work that way. Real love lives with uncertainty. It's fluid, unpredictable, sometimes messy. Marriage, however, tries to turn love into structure, to lock it into predictability. And that's where the tension lies between the human need for freedom and the societal need for security. We want both, but they rarely coexist comfortably. So we live in this strange in between wanting the emotional freedom of modern life, but the security of traditional marriage. We want adventure without risk, passion without pain, change without loss. It's not that we're incapable of love. It's that our version of love is evolving faster than our structures can keep up with. Marriage, as we inherited it, isn't broken, it's outdated. And until we redesign it to reflect our current realities, it will keep clashing with what we actually need. Maybe the modern marriage isn't supposed to look like the old one. Maybe it's meant to be more flexible, less about possession, more about partnership, less about permanence, more about presence. Maybe instead of saying forever, we should say as long as we both keep growing in the same direction. That doesn't make it less meaningful, it makes it more human. Because love, in its purest form, isn't about completing or fixing or owning, it's about witnessing, walking alongside someone while both of you keep changing without pretending that change isn't real. That's the truth behind the modern mismatch marriage isn't failing us. We're just finally waking up to the fact that we've outgrown the old rules, and we're brave enough to start rewriting them. Don't get married until you understand what love actually is. That line sounds simple, maybe even obvious, but most people don't understand love, not really. They understand attachment, they understand excitement, they understand infatuation, validation, and chemistry. But love, real love, is something different. It's quieter, deeper, it's less dramatic, and far more demanding. It asks for growth, for honesty, for maturity, for the willingness to be wrong and still stay kind. It's not the fireworks of the beginning or the fantasy of happily ever after. It's what happens when the noise fades, when the masks come off, and when life tests what your heart claims to believe in. And that's why so many people get married before they understand it, because the world sells love as a feeling, when in truth, it's a discipline. We mistake love for the high of being chosen, for the thrill of being seen and wanted. We equate attention with affection, consistency with compatibility, passion with permanence. But all those things fade or shift with time. The rush of falling in love eventually settles into something less intoxicating. And that's when people start to panic. They think love is gone, when in reality, it's only just beginning to show its real face. Love isn't the butterflies, it's the ability to stay gentle when the butterflies are gone. It's learning to listen when it's easier to argue, to forgive when pride screams not to keep showing up even when comfort turns into confrontation. Marriage tests whether you understand love or just enjoy being loved. Because in marriage, you will see each other's shadows. You will see the parts of a person that no one else gets to see. The insecurities, the frustrations, the contradictions. And if you haven't faced your own, you'll take theirs personally. You'll start blaming, resenting, or retreating. You'll expect them to fix what you haven't healed in yourself. Love turns toxic when it becomes an exchange of emotional debts. I love you if you fill my emptiness. But real love doesn't demand someone to complete you. It invites both of you to keep growing side by side even when that growth hurts. Understanding love means understanding impermanence. People change. Seasons shift. Even the person you love most will disappoint you. They will hurt you, not always out of malice, but because they're human, and you'll hurt them too. Love doesn't mean avoiding pain. It means knowing how to move through it without destroying each other. It means learning to rebuild trust after it's been cracked. It means not weaponizing vulnerability, not running away at the first sign of imperfection. That kind of love takes emotional endurance, and most people aren't taught that. They're taught to chase intensity, not integrity. The truth is, love isn't something you fall into, it's something you grow into. Falling is easy, it's thrilling, it's cinematic, it's addictive. But growth is slow, uncomfortable, and unglamorous. You have to choose it over and over again, especially when life becomes heavy, when work is stressful, when money is tight, when silence stretches between you like a wall. If you don't understand love as a verb, as action, marriage will expose that. Because marriage amplifies everything: your patience, your insecurities, your compassion, your selfishness. Whatever you haven't learned to manage within yourself will echo in your relationship until you face it. And that's why you shouldn't get married until you understand what love is, not in theory, but in practice. Love is not possession. It's not control. It's not a guarantee of eternal happiness. It's freedom with commitment, independence with connection, respect with vulnerability. It's the ability to see someone fully, their strength, their flaws, their contradictions, and still choose them without needing them to be perfect. It's knowing you could live without them, but wanting to build with them anyway. That's love without dependency, mature, grounded, and alive. When you understand love, you stop asking it to save you. You stop trying to fix or own the person you love. You start seeing love as something you give, not something you get. It becomes less about being right and more about being kind. Less about winning arguments and more about protecting peace. It's no longer about finding the one, but about being someone capable of real connection. Because love isn't found. It's created through daily acts of understanding, forgiveness, and care. So don't get married until you've learned to be alone without collapsing. Until you've learned to sit with your own silence, to hold your own heart, to face your own flaws. Don't get married because you're lonely or because everyone else is doing it. Don't get married because you're tired of searching. Get married when you've learned to love yourself enough not to need someone else to prove you're lovable. Because only then will you be ready to love someone for who they are, not for what they can fill in you. Marriage isn't the beginning of love, it's the testing ground of it, and only those who've learned what love really is, patience, humility, forgiveness, curiosity, courage, will survive its storm. So don't rush to find someone to marry. Learn what love means first, because the truth is, the only thing more painful than being alone is being with someone and still feeling lonely. And that's what happens when you mistake connection for completion. Love first, deeply and honestly. And if you still want to get married after that, then you'll be ready.